Hello again. So this video is going to be somewhat of a sequel to my weekend trip in Bisbee video that I just posted. So today we're going to be talking about sequencing. So what is sequencing? Well, in the context of photography, it is the process of arranging or pairing images in a way that provides continuity, tells a story, or is just done creatively. Let's say you've gone out and you've taken a bunch of photos and now you want to create a bigger body of work. Let's say you want to make a book or a zine. Well, whereas before you could appreciate those images on their own and they stand out on their own as individual pieces of work, now that you are essentially combining those images into one piece of art, you need to find a way to make all of those different images that you've taken work well together. This can be done in a ton of different ways, and ultimately it is up to you as the artist, as the photographer, to arrange them in whatever way you see fit. Now, what we're going to do in today's video is I'm going to take two books from my collection and we're going to look at some pairings that kind of showcase this idea. Then after that, we're going to do a little exercise. So I went to Walgreens and I printed out just some cheap prints of a bunch of the photos that I took. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to take my photos and we're going to do a little sequencing exercises. We're going to find pairs that work nicely together, and then at the end we will take a bunch of photos and we're going to make a little collage and try and tell a story or just find something that works. This is an idea that I've seen a lot of creators do on YouTube. Matt Day has made photos like this, Willem Verbeek. I just recently discovered a creator by the name of Kevin J. Thompson, who has a series about creating a zine. And in one of his videos, he kind of goes through this process of sequencing, and that very much inspired me to do this. So be sure to check him out. So with all of that said, the two photo books that we are going to be talking about today. This one right here is Lunch Poems by Leah Francis. We'll dive into more details here in just a second. And what we're going to start off with is the very famous, the very popular Uncommon Places by Stephen Shore. So, let's jump into it. So right here we have Uncommon Places by Stephen Shore. This edition published by Aperture. This is one of my absolute favorites that I own. I've gotten so much inspiration through looking at this. There's just some really beautiful large format images in here. If you don't know who Stephen Shore is, he sort of pioneered the American road trip genre of photography. He traveled all throughout the country, taking these really amazing large format photographs, I believe primarily on 8x10 as well as some 4x5. And that brings us to our first set of images. You may have seen this image before. This is an extremely popular image. And then on the left here, we've got an image of what looks like a motel. Yep, the Sun and Sand Motel in Holbrook, Arizona. I would say the first thing that we notice about these two images set together would just be the strong contrast of colors. The image on the left here, the color palette, primarily beige, definitely on the warmer side. Whereas the image on the right, we've got all of these nice bright greens, and the dominant color being this beautiful like blue sky right here. So these two images next to each other obviously just work nice because they're two totally different complementary color palettes. But one thing, if you look hard enough, and I'll pull this closer to the camera so that you can see. So we've got this billboard right here with this beautiful mountain range set against this lake with all these nice trees lining the mountain right here. And then if you look at this image, if you get a little bit closer, right there, you can see this picture frame of what seemingly looks like another mountain range set against a lake with a bunch of trees right here. There's now so much more to these set of images being sequenced next to each other than just their color palette. And that's what's so cool about looking through photo books like this, is that it really allows you to dive deep into the images and get a closer look and figure out why exactly the artist or the publisher decided to set these images next to each other. So, very, very cool. Moving on. This is so clever. So, first thing we notice, unlike the other set of images, the color palette is very similar. Lots of greens, predominantly some heavy blues. But what is so cool is if we look at this house here, we've got what looks like they're either painting the house blue or painting it white, or the paint is just being stripped away. I'm not quite sure. But when I look at this house, what I see is a bright blue sky with some nice, fluffy white clouds. And then with the context of that, we look at this image here, we see a nice, bright, beautiful blue with a bunch of fluffy white clouds. It's just so creative and clever to set these two images next to each other. And then the other thing that is awesome, there's very specific examples of a red color in this image, being the door. A very limited example of reds here. And then we go over here and we see there's just this one lone red car scattered amongst this sea of blue and green cars right here. So in a way, they're almost the same image in two totally different contexts. Love this. Moving on to our next book, we have Lunch Poems by Leah Francis. On a side note, this is probably my absolutely most favorite design photo book. I just think this is so clever, and obviously you can't feel this, but the texture on the cover of this book is just absolutely amazing to feel and touch. It feels so good in the hands. And this design, I just think is so cool. This little coaster with that little coffee stain just fits the title so well. Anyway, I picked this up from the publisher Aliens in Residence. Last I checked, this is no longer available through them. And I also saw on her website that it is also sold out. Picking up this one might be a little bit more difficult compared to Uncommon Places, but if you could somehow find a copy of this, whether it's used or whatever, I highly recommend it, because this one is another one of my absolute favorites. Lunch Poems is a collection of work primarily shot on square format. I believe primarily during like pre-COVID and a little bit during COVID, but it's basically just a ton of photos of diners and storefronts, mostly taking place throughout Pennsylvania, New England, New York, kind of that East Coast area. So, starting with this first image, we can assume that these two photos were taken in the same place, most likely on the same day. We got a picture of what looks to be behind the counter of a diner. And then we've got this Harley-Davidson motorcycle logo. So we've got that right there. And then moving over to this second image, we can see this man sitting at what is most likely, again, the same exact counter. He happens to be wearing this shirt, which features a bald eagle with these very nice wings right here, which mimics the logo of the Harley-Davidson sign. Move on to the next. All right, this one here is actually going to require the turning of a page to be effective. I've been showing a lot of examples of two images side by side and how those work together, but sequencing a book goes far beyond just placing two photos next to each other. You are telling a story throughout dozens, 50, sometimes 100 images in one book. So obviously that's going to require you to place images on different pages that work really well together. And I will show you in this example here. First thing we see here, two very different color palettes, lots of pinks. And then in this side, we have a more cool color palette with this blue building here. And then of course, what you probably most likely see when you first reach this page is this RC Cola sign, right? So blue with some red highlights. Then when you turn the page, we get another predominantly cool color palette here. But what we also see is we get another example of the RC Cola logo. So when you're looking at these first set of images, we can see the logo here, very pink right here. So the first thing, when you turn the page, you're going from all of these pinks, and then all of a sudden, boom, a bunch of blues, right? And we know blue and pink work really nicely together. So that's very satisfying. Taking a closer look, you look at the RC Cola sign, and that allows you to remember, oh, we just saw that right before we turned the page. So those three sets of images going one by one by one all work very nicely together. Now, we're going to do our little exercise here. In these two piles, we have more or less all of the images that I took from my last video, which was my little Bisbee photo trip. Based off of everything that we've looked at and everything that we've learned about sequencing, I'm going to go through, divide all of them up into categories, make a couple of selections, and then we are going to do our own little sequence. Let's get started. Okay, so we've got all of the images divided up into 5 categories. Up here on the top left, we have what I am calling the midday architecture shots. So houses, buildings, structures, stuff like that. Top right, same exact thing, but these ones were shot closer to prime time of golden hour during sunset. In the middle here, we have images that were shot at night. Bottom left, this is our vehicle category. And then finally on the bottom right here, we have what I'm calling the nature shots. These were taken over one weekend, so it's not exactly the most diverse set of images, but we're gonna have fun with it anyway, and we're gonna try and create something with what we've got. All right, this might take me a while. We're gonna go through all these categories, and we are going to keep images that we like, and we're going to discard the ones that we don't think are going to fit. So let's start first with the night photos. This one I don't think I'm going to keep. This one I will be keeping. We'll keep that one. This one we will keep. It features a lot of cars, so I think we might be able to play something nicely with these other images of cars here. We're going to keep that one. I'm going to get rid of that one. I'm going to put in a maybe. Get rid of it. All right, I'm going to speed this up, go through the rest of them, and then I will be back. Okay, so got all of my keepers, and then everything else I'm going to put off to the side. Okay, so I've got all of my keepers here. Now I need to take these and I need to narrow them down even smaller because there's still too many images for the sake of this exercise. This is my madness right now. None of this probably makes sense to anybody, but I'm getting there somehow. It doesn't look like it, but I'm getting somewhere. Also, I got smart and decided to turn off this light above me. So these should be a little easier to see now. So here is a little selection from all of my keepers. Still trying to figure out what everything means together, but I figured it's going to be best to break this down step by step. So I'm going to start with these images here. And as far as these go, got this Texaco sign, these like gas pumps, and this old vintage car right here. A couple of months before Nikki and I went to Bisbee, there was actually a big fire on Main Street that pretty much completely destroyed 2 of these buildings right here. We've got the back of this bus here, the Strayhound. So these 2 images connect because we've got kind of like a theme of vehicles, of cars, and then you could even see this Greyhound logo right here, set side by side. Could work nicely together. They're both taken in the same place. We've got some matching imagery with the sign right here and then the name of the bus right here. I think there's something to be said about placing these two images next to each other as well. So this building was burned down by a fire. Utilizing this image right here, we sense a theme of gasoline. So you've got this image right here with ideas of gasoline. Gasoline can cause fires, right? This building was burned down by a fire. Maybe it's a stretch, I don't know, but it's an idea. So we have two examples of churches right here that obviously these work well together because they're churches, but there's also a nice contrast between the architecture. You got kind of the grandness of this chapel versus this little more humble church that kind of looks like it was a house converted into a church. These two. Obviously we've got these two bullet holes in the side of this car, and then this little detail shot of this sign, which is just covered in bullet holes. And with those two things, we can almost make up a story in our head. You know, maybe there was a guy right here, took some shots at this window, passed through the car, and hit this sign on the wall behind the car. So that's something fun that you can do when looking through your images, is just creating stories. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select about 9 or so images, and we're going to create a little spread of images that either tell a story or just kind of work nicely together. So we're going to go through these one by one, kind of setting them up into a little grid. We're going to see what we can come up with. I would like to use this in some way, because I think right now we've got a lot of just like bright images and we need to have something kind of dark in there. Let's replace the flies. I think I want one more nighttime photo. I think I'm gonna put this one over this one actually. Got this one as well. This one I really like because it's got a very strong pop of green, which I feel may look nice in here somewhere. I think what I'll do is I'll probably replace this one. And then we've got Castle Rock, which I think will be a nice thing to add because we've got a lot of buildings. Maybe that one? No, I like how that one looks. I think I want to keep this one and get rid of this one. This one's nice because it's more of a detailed shot and there's not a lot of those in here. Maybe I don't want this one. I think we're just going to get rid of it. So I kind of like these images that I've selected. Now I'm just going to move them around in a way that I feel makes some sense. So I want this image up here to be the first image of our sequence. So what is a strong photo that we can utilize to start with? It should probably be a landscape. I think one during the day. Maybe we'll do this school. It's got Bisbee written on it. It's kind of like you're being introduced to the town. So we'll start off with that one. Maybe next we will add this house right here. So you're being introduced to Bisbee, and as you enter the town, you kind of get a sense of the neighborhood. I want to keep that one. Okay, so maybe as you're entering the town, we're getting closer to sunset. And I feel this image right here kind of gives you the sense that that sun is going down. It's getting a little bit darker outside. We're gonna place this one next. So you've got high school, house, and then we can kind of break up that architecture with this example of greenery. Now we are entering nighttime. It's becoming nighttime, but there's still a little bit of light in the sky. And then that work? Maybe 2 night images together. So far I'm starting to think maybe our story here is just us arriving in the town, maybe closer to sunset, and then just us going through the rest of our day, kind of from light to dark and then back to light again, maybe. Maybe it'd be nice to break this up though. There's no rules, you know? Maybe having a strong detailed shot in the middle kind of works. That way you can break up these 2 darker images right here. It looks kind of good. Let's see. I think this image, oh my God, cats. Sorry, my cats are knocking down all of my, God damn it. I think this image needs to go last in our sequence here. this image bookending this image is kind of nice because the architecture is pretty similar, and also, if you look closely, you can see the Bisbee, the B on the side of the mountain right there, which acts as a nice bookend to having the word Bisbee written here in the first image on the school. And then again, just reminding you at the end sort of where you are. Now this church here, maybe this needs to go right here, maybe? Because you kind of go dark, bright pink, dark again, bright blue sky. I think that kind of looks well. That way you're alternating from darker colors to more bright primary colors. Then you get one more shot of some greenery before the sun sets on the end of our time in Bisbee. All right, I think this is going to be our final sequence. So just going over it one more time, we're introduced to the town kind of towards midday with the Bisbee High School, so we have an idea of where we are. And then as you enter the town, you get a sense of the neighborhoods and kind of a view of the terrain with all of these mountains in the background. You get a nice shot of some more greenery as the sun is setting. And then we enter into late blue hour as we're getting darker. Another image of a neighborhood right here. So we're going deeper into the town. A nice bright image with a bunch of details to help break up these two nighttime images. Then moving on, we have the church right here, which adds a nice contrast between these two dark images. So we've got a nice little pop of blue. More greenery right here, which kind of helps break up these two images right here. And then a nice sunset with the Bisbee Bee on the side of the mountain in the background. Once again, to remind you where we are. But yeah, I think all of those images together look pretty nice, if I say so myself. Okay, that was fun. Now, I hope this exercise inspired you to do something similar with your work. This was a fun way for me to keep my creative energy flowing, because in Phoenix, it is painful to step foot outside. And God knows the last thing that I want to be doing is walking around in 120 degrees taking photos. If you're not looking at photo books already, I would highly, highly encourage that you do. I started getting into them about a year ago, and ever since then, just through looking a whole bunch of different artists and their work, it's really allowed me to think about my own work in a completely different way. And I now feel like I can take the images that I've taken and turn them into something bigger. And even if you do not plan on making a book out of your work, maybe you just like to let your work stand on its own, I would still encourage that you give this a shot, because in the end, it's just a fun activity to do, and again, keeps your creative juices flowing. But yeah, that's all I've got for this one. Thank you again for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, subscribe, all the things, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Okay, bye.